In-field soil tests are simple, cost-effective means to understanding soil health, identify problem areas in the field that may affect yield or be prone to degradation, and better understand the impact of management practices on soil. In this video, we're going to be conducting an in-field soil analysis on an actual organic farm and looking at compaction, crusting, diversity of macrolife, ground cover, ponding, aggregate stability, soil smell, soil color, root growth, and plant health. Before going to the field, collect the following materials and supplies that you will need to complete the soil analysis. You will need one medium-sized clear glass jar or other transparent container, a notebook and pen to record the results, a 12-inch ruler, a spade or shovel, a thin metal wire approximately 5 to 10 millimeters in diameter, like a wire coat hanger or a plastic stick for penetrating the soil, a tape measure or a 12-foot piece of rope marked off every 1 foot, and water for the test.
Okay, the first test we're going to be doing is looking at compaction. Compaction is the compression of soil particles into a smaller volume, which reduces the size of pore space available for air and water. Results from a compaction test will tell us how easy it is for the roots to grow in the soil and whether or not the water can penetrate the soil profile. So to do this particular test, we're going to push a thin metal probe into the ground and feel for areas that are hard to push through. You shouldn't have to push extremely hard. You should only be able to use one hand to push the probe into the soil. So as you're pushing the probe into the soil, when all of a sudden it gets harder to push, don't keep forcing it down. Instead, stop there and measure how deep you are able to go.
We're right at 9 inches before resistance. And here's another spot where no resistance is felt until 14 inches.
The second test we're going to do is a visual test. So you don't need any equipment to do this. For visual tests, it's important to walk around the area in several meters rather than trying to see everything from one place. So ideally, you want to conduct this test shortly after a rain. If that's not possible, no need to worry. Looking for signs of crusting, basically where the soil is hard on top, where the soil remains intact when you pick it up, and where plants might not be growing well. If you can't see areas where there's surface crusting or there's a very small amount covering less than 5% of the parcel, that's considered good. The next test we're going to be doing is diversity of macrolife. For this test, you're looking for different macrolife or insects in the soil. It's not important to be able to identify the individual insects for this test. You're just going to count all the different ones that you see. So start by selecting a site where you'll dig a small hole, but before you dig, walk close by, 2 steps in each direction to your digging location and see if you can spot any macrolife on the surface of the soil. Next, you're going to dig a small hole and you're going to count how many different insects you can find in 1 shovelful of soil. If you're able to place the soil on a tarp or sheet or other solid surface, as you take the scoopful out, it makes it easier to spot different macrolife. The interpretation of these results are as follows. If you can find 5 or more different insects, that is considered good. The next test we're going to conduct is ground cover. For this test, you're going to walk along a transect or line at every 1 foot interval. You're going to measure if the soil is covered or not. Do this over a 10-foot line, so you're going to have 10 measurements, 10 points of either covered or not covered, which then you can calculate the percentage of cover from.
Take the number of points recorded as covered divided by the total points along the transect times 100.
The next test we're going to conduct is ponding. This is another test that is visual and doesn't require any equipment or tools. Ideally, you want to do this shortly after it rains because you'll be looking for areas where the water collects. If you have standing water in a few places but not widespread across the field 24 hours after it rains, that's considered fair. And lots of standing water in many places across the field after 24 hours is considered poor. The next test we're going to conduct is aggregate stability. You'll need a clear glass jar, a stopwatch, and some water for this test. So fill the jar with some water about halfway full and pick up a soil clump or an aggregate from the surface of the soil and drop it in the water.
An aggregate about the size of a quarter was used for this test.
So after 5 minutes, if the water is clear or fairly clear and more than 80% of the aggregate remains intact, this is considered good. Okay, the next test is soil smell. To do this test, you need a shovel and your nose. It may sound a bit odd, but you can tell quite a bit about soil by the way it smells. So we're going to dig a fresh soil pit. So to interpret the results, if it smells pleasant, sweet, and earthy, that's good. So the next test we're going to do is soil color. So pull some soil out of a hole you've dug, wet it slightly, and look at the color. First, check if your soil has a gray color and or if you can find any red spots or reddish-brown dark spots called mottling. This usually occurs when your soil is waterlogged for long periods of time. Otherwise, you're looking for dark brown and rich colors or even a black soil color. For this test, just record whether your soil is dark brown, medium brown, or light brown, and whether you've noticed any gray features. It can be helpful to compare productive areas to poor performing areas of the parcel to get a sense of how color can change between the areas. For this next test, we're going to be looking at root growth. For this test, we'll be digging a hole and looking at crop roots, the way they grow, their depth, branching, and pattern. If roots are abundant, branched, and unrestricted, that's considered good. If roots are somewhat restricted, there are some fine roots, that would be fair. Example of a poor test is when roots are lacking, not many of them, they seem restricted and not well branched. So we're going to do a root growth test on a stand of alfalfa. You can see this tap root here, how deep that's going down into the soil. And we have lots of good small fibers here, but we have good, very, very good root structure here. For the plant health test, we're going to start this test by walking around the field and looking for areas where plants look less healthy than other areas of the parcel. For example, plants are not growing as well or smaller. Ground cover plants don't grow as well. Plants are different shades of color. And next we're going to get up close to any plants that we've identified as not being as healthy compared to other plants in the field. And we're going to look for signs like specific discoloration and stunted growth. Plant health can be related to other non-soil factors like water deficiencies or differences in light, but they can also be directly related to soil like nutrient deficiency, which can be present as discoloration, such as yellow leaves, for example. So it's important to note that nutrient deficiencies can vary in appearance depending on the crop, and they may only be a part of a larger problem that's affecting plant health. So we're going to interpret these results as follows. A rating of good is plants are dark green with good even growth. Fair is plant growth is adequate but variable and plants are light or medium green color. And poor is when plants are discolored, have stunted growth, and variable height. And I would consider these healthy plants.